All right, so today's webinar is security evaluation. So this is basically figuring out, especially for our people out there that have older security camera systems, um, what state are they in, how to figure that out, and what path of modernization you have, whether it's, bigger budget, let's get all new cameras kind of thing, or more chisel approaching where you're going to go through and figure out the best ways of handling that. So let's just jump right into it. Um, Today's agenda, like I said, how to evaluate your current security system, figure out what's working, what's not working, potential flaws there. Some of the risk and challenges to older systems. There's a lot of different things that exist out there that people maybe not be aware of. And then, of course, we'll talk about modernization paths and do any questions that we might have at the end. So if you're new to SCW, we are a value-driven company that provides end-to-end security solutions. So whether you're looking for a self-install, you're looking to replace a couple cameras, we'll happily get you those couple cameras. We can also provide turnkey installation across the country. So if you need a full install, we've got that for you too. And for our dealers out there, we also have a great dealer program. So if you're interested in that, get in touch with us. And last thing about us that sort of made us famous, I guess you could say, is our world-class US-based support. It's unlimited with us. It's free, so there's no cost there. And you get that anytime you get our systems. So how do we evaluate our security? And this is obviously the first step in determining what is your current system like. And there are really three main components of a security camera evaluation or security system evaluation. It's going to be a system health check is the first thing we want to do. We're also going to look at access checks, which are going to determine, who actually can actually get and view your camera system. Is it the people who should have access, do they actually have access? And maybe more importantly, so the people who should no longer have access, so ex-employees, etc., do they not, are we sure that they don't have access anymore? And then we'll also talk about analytic checks as well. So system health. Um, every single client that we interact with is a little different when it comes to the camera system, right? Some people use this every second of the day, basically. It's a vital part of not just their security, but sometimes their operations. And so they're constantly in check with what's going on with the system, how the cameras are looking, etc. There are also others that really install them. They might be active on them for a little bit, and then they sort of stop looking at them until there's an incident. And that could be 6 months, it could be years before they check him again. And so especially if you're in that bucket of people who only check it when you have an incident and it's every couple of months, it's a really good idea to do a system health check. And this is really the starting point of this. So we want to figure out things like, are all the cameras working? It's very simple, but the worst thing that you would have happen is that you have an event in front of a camera, you go and you find out that the camera's been down for 3 months, you can do that for really quickly too. As you have access to it, just check, are all the cameras currently working? All you have to do is go on live view, check that, and if there are any of them down, then you know you need to address it. One thing that's a little bit takes a little bit more time than just, hey, simply are the cameras online and am I getting video from them still, is the clarity in the view. So people with older systems, over time you get dust, grime, dirt, everything else starts to accumulate on those lenses and the camera, and those can affect the quality of the video you're getting. The other thing that could happen too is um, over time, the screws that tighten and lock in the view that you wanted, maybe they start to become a little loose. And that the camera view shifts. So instead of looking at, say, the cash register, you're now looking more at the ground. And so that's something that you want to check while you're looking at them live. Okay, yep, all my cameras are there. Am I still seeing what I should be seeing, and are they clear currently during a daytime operation? Um, Cleaning cameras is something that is definitely important. It's going to depend on where you're located, where the cameras are located. And it's really easy. We actually have a couple of guides out there. You only really need water and a microfiber cloth. You don't need to go too crazy with things. We'll send it out an email after this with some further info on some of the things we talked about. Like we have a little video on how to clean cameras correctly. And then the other part of footage, right, is the nighttime. So daytime is, usually it's harder to see kind of the quality cameras during the day because it's so bright, everything's in there, so it looks okay. But then you might have something at night like this one over here in the corner. So you can see in the corner here, we've got a view that actually looks fine during the daytime, but during the nighttime, there's actually like a spider that comes in front of it and actually sort of blocks the view, believe it or not. And that can happen from dirt, dust, spider webs, etc. Um, so again, another thing that you're going to want to check is how good is the night vision quality. So to do that, you just want to go through, the footage at night, double check it. Again, this could be a little bit of a time-consuming process, especially if you have a lot of cameras. But you just really want to double check them both during the day and night. So whether you're checking it at night live and just checking there. Or if you're going back during the day and you look at playback, go to, midnight, 2 a.m., whatever time, to see what it looks like at the nighttime as well. And of course, like the key part of this is, the vast majority of incidents do happen, especially in a commercial application, in nighttime or low light situations. And so you may think the camera looks great during the day or looks fine during the day, and then you realize that there's a spider web in front of it. We're trying to avoid that. And then playback. This is another thing, especially for older systems. Are the cameras all still recording? There are situations where the hard drives, especially when you get into older systems, they will start to fail over time. The older they get, the higher the failure rate is going to be. And so you want to make sure that basically that the hard drive is still working. Um, does the schedule still fit your needs? So are you're recording maybe on motion before? Do you need to switch it over to constant or vice versa? And are you getting the footage retention you expect? And when we say footage retention, we're talking about the days of retention there. So, you expected to get 30 days. Are you getting the 30 days that you expected? These are kind of some of the playback things you want to look at too. If you're doing this for the night vision, this is a good time to check that as well. And then on top of that, reliability. How is it actually working? Sometimes if you just pop in for 15 seconds, 30 seconds, look at your cameras, they may be all great, right? But sometimes there are issues that are a little harder to track, like it's intermittent. So maybe a camera is um, going online, offline during the course of a day. Especially if you've got it on motion detection recording, that can be hard to detect if that's actually happening. But if you do have it on 24/7 recording, double check that. You may also be able to check things like logs for video loss. You can also check if there are any gaps in playback. When you're looking at that, if you get a 24-hour day and you see a bunch of gaps in it, there's possibly some issues going on. A lot of times too, NVRs and other systems out there allow you to check um, the uptime for that, which lets you know how often that last time that NVR has been rebooted or turned offline. And so if you are in a situation where you're expecting issues, if the NVR, you didn't reboot it in the last couple weeks or whatever, and it's got an uptime of 24 hours or 1.5 days or whatever, something is turning off that system. Um, and so when it comes to system health check, this is like the high level check. So we want to just make sure that all your cameras are working live, that they're still achieving that desired view, nothing shifted. Um, the cameras are recording and getting the required retention. The image is still clear during both the day and night, and the cameras are working reliably 24/7, 365 days. Now, sometimes this can be a lot for people to do. When we start going over, oh man, you've got, especially for our multi-location clients that were larger system clients, when they have camera systems that are 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, and um, maybe or another team is now taking over a location, or whatever the scenario is, it can be very daunting to have to go in and look manually and check this stuff out. So a couple of things is if you go for the health check, one of the things I recommend is after you do that health check is most systems out there, including ours, you can set up notifications to let you know of a lot of these things. So, for example, if a camera goes offline or if a hard drive's having an issue, you can set up these notifications to let you know immediately rather than finding out when you're doing a check or worse when you have an incident. So that way, you kind of you use the health check as sort of your starting point, your clean slate, and then you kind of go from there with notifications. And you still may want to check once in a while. And then the other thing too I want to mention is that we can provide comprehensive health checks for you. So if that's something you're interested in, whether it's a one-time health check to get you up to speed and everything, or if it's something you want us to check on a regular basis, either quarterly, weekly, monthly, we have different options for that. And so if you're in a situation where time is very restricted, and this sounds like it's maybe not a possibility for you, definitely let us know. We can perform that system health check for you and give you clarification on all of that stuff we just talked about. So we've talked about the system health check, which is, one of the most critical things. The other critical things are the access and security checks. So when you have an older system, it's really important just to know, can you still access this device? And again, the simplest way of checking that is just go on your laptop or your desktop, check there. Is it still working? Can you still see the video, etc.? Is it still working on your smartphone? Again, just pull up the app that you should have. Um, and then the other thing that you may want to do here is also check whether you can access it both locally at the facility as well as remotely when you're away from the facility too, if that's something that you want to do. Um, and on top of that, we need to audit who has access. A lot of these systems over time, they don't necessarily get managed very well in terms of, or some of them out there, I should say, don't get managed very well in terms of sharing access with somebody, sharing passwords, etc. And obviously, if you give the wrong password to somebody, that could be an issue. Um, so again, the first thing we want to check is just can we actually access it? Check it on your computer and the smartphone at the facility, and then once you confirm that you can access it locally, go ahead and try it remotely. Turn off your Wi-Fi or go away from the facility if you can, and then double check can you still access it remotely? If you can, great. That means that local and remote access are working. Another question, though, and then this is especially true when it comes to remote access, is it secure? Is remote access secure? Older systems out there, and 5 years old, some systems out there actually still require this, are kind of especially vulnerable because we have to do something called port forwarding with these, and port forwarding is pretty risky. Um, so what port forwarding really is you're basically going in and saying, I want this NVR available to me across the internet. And so if you're using like an external IP address, for example, or maybe like a DDNS address, like no IP or DynDNS or one of those ones out there, you're most likely using port forwarding for your remote access. And that means that that same login screen that you see when you go to the web interface or whatever can potentially be accessed by anyone who knows that IP address or the DDNS address across the entire internet. And so um, this used to be, port forwarding used to be commonly known as like not the greatest security practice, but the practicality of maybe how bad it was always a little bit, especially 5, 10 years ago. People still did it because it felt like, yes, we know it's kind of a bad thing, but the risk of it is pretty low of somebody finding your IP. What's really changed in the last couple of years, of course, is AI. There are a lot of bots out there and everything that are scrounging the internet for any devices with any value to people and automatically cataloging them. And so the risk of this has become a lot higher in 2026 than it was in 2015, 2020, 2016, excuse me. And again, one of the other compounding things of the risk here is that if you have an older system, it's very likely that there's no more firmware updates for those, right? There's no more software updates. And so what that means is that there potentially could be vulnerabilities, which means even if they don't know your password, they could get into your system and, either, you know, damage your system, erase footage, whatever. or potentially even use that as a springboard to get deal with other devices that are on the network. And so there's a lot of dangers there. It's sort of like if you have an old system, right? It's like running Windows 7 today. I'm sure you've seen where even Windows 10 now is no longer supported by Microsoft. So there's vulnerabilities there that potentially could exist, and especially with like something like Windows 7, um, your computer's a lot more likely to get viruses and stuff like that because of the fact that it's no longer fixed and patched by Microsoft. So it's kind of a similar concept there. If you've got an older NVR, it's very likely that the software updates have stopped for it. So what is the alternative if you are using port forwarding? So we 100% do not recommend, strongly discourage port forwarding. It's a very tough practice nowadays when you're dealing with the AI and the bots and everything like that. So what we recommend is a couple different paths. If your system has a P2P, so that or cloud P2P option, typically that's what we're going to recommend first because it doesn't require port forwarding. Some of them also don't even require UPnP, which is sort of an automated port forwarding kind of thing. So it's going to be more secure and then also it'll be simpler too. A lot of times the port forwarding is not only security wise bad, but it also takes a lot of time and effort to actually get done. So P2P makes it a lot simpler, a lot more robust. For our systems, for example, you can keep them on. If you change routers or whatever, it's not going to affect your remote access being interrupted or anything like that. So, and then if you have an older system where P2P is not an option, which does commonly come up on systems that are really old, um, you could potentially use a private VPN. And so that allows you to access that through a private secure VPN tunnel, and that's going to prevent outside forces from trying to access it. There are also things like Cloudflare tunnels and Tailscale. If you look into those, they're kind of a similar idea behind a private VPN, but just executed in a little bit of a different way. Um, Now, I will mention that both private VPNs and Cloudflare tunnels and these other ones, they're going to require some people with IT knowledge and setup. So you're going to need to get potentially equipment there, routers that support private VPNs, etc. So it's not a simple solution by any means, but it is something that um, is a much better, much more secure idea than using port forwarding. So, and then we go into the access side of things. And so this is again where I don't like to use the term like neglected, but systems that have sort of been maybe neglected is the right word. Over time, people kind of lose track of who has access, who should have access. So if you're in a system where you're sharing out passwords, for example, that's one of the other advantages of a lot of the P2P services, and especially the one that we use, is that you can have much better access on who has access and sharing. So that would be another reason why you may want to look into that. But if you're still sharing like a direct username and password for people, it's probably a good idea to just go ahead and just reset them, get all new passwords, and then share access with those who need it. So that way you're just starting from fresh, and that's going to let you know that any people who shouldn't have access, like say an ex-employee or maybe somebody who's changed departments or something like that, make sure that they don't have access anymore. Because once you change that password, their access should be revoked as well. And like I mentioned, this the user management side of this. If this is something that's becoming, um, an issue for you, I would definitely reach out to us. We can kind of go into more detail on how the P2P service that we use, helps that. It gives you very easy access to see who has access and either share or revoke access within a couple clicks. So. And the last couple things we'll talk about here is AI checks. So most older systems out there rely on something called motion detection. And this is a very basic analytic, and I use that air quotes in a very, simple way because it is a very simple analytic. It's stretching the word of analytic, honestly. All it means is basically that the colors in the images have changed. So what that eventually means is that every single thing sets off motion detection from rain, bugs, snow, dust, shadows, somebody's headlights going in. And so um, if you're trying to find footage and you're often trying to find footage, you don't know really the time period it comes from, it can be very difficult when you're relying on motion detection to actually find footage. Um, and then if you're trying to do something like notifications, for example, you want to know when somebody's at your facility or in an area after hours, a lot of times those false positives, those false alerts from a bug being set off, make it really difficult, if not impossible, to get reliable notifications. You don't want to be woken up at 2 a.m. in the morning when a bug is in front of your camera or the light changed in the area or whatever, right? So um, one of the things that's really happened just in the last year or two is AI has really changed how video works nowadays, and it's just we're just sort of on the cusp of it. But what's nice about it is that um, nowadays, it's not just doing motion detection. So it's specifically looking for objects like, hey, that's a person, that's a vehicle. And so that's going to cut down those false positives very, very dramatically. So you can know when somebody's in your parking lot at 2 a.m. because it's going to accurately see that video, see that that's a car, and then give you that alert versus, hey, some colors changed over here, let's send a notification. Um, there are even more advanced ones like color search, the ability to search for a red vehicle, a blue vehicle, somebody wearing a black shirt or a gray shirt or blue shirt, whatever. Um, and so these analytics have become a lot more mainstream, a lot more affordable. And so before doing something like people and vehicle used to cost, a bit, you have to get a big server out there. You have to spend, monthly and yearly subscription fees just to get that feature. Nowadays, it's included in basically all of our cameras. And then what that AI really gets you is things that again, better notifications, but also in the event that you need to find footage, you can go from potentially having to spend hours looking for that piece of footage to minutes. And that's really what it's all about. It's saving time and saving money. Um, there are also even ones that are more advanced ones that go into safety and operation. So, like for example, face recognition, where this is usually ones that do require some additional fees still out there, but the ability to detect not just hey, there's a person, but that's James on campus, and I need a notification when James gets here. You also have things like PPE notifications. So, for example, when somebody's not wearing protective gear, you can get an alert that lets you know. And then, of course, more safety determined ones like gun, slip and fall, accident detection. There's a lot of ones out there that can help um, alert you to things very, very quickly, too. And here's some of the examples. So this is just a quick vehicle search here. You can see what that looks like. Um, and then this is another feature that we have now built into our recorders and cameras. So once you have both our cameras and our recorders, it's a feature called trace search. So basically what we can do is draw a box around somebody on playback, and then it will search all the rest of the cameras on that system for that person on there. And so that would be something like literally if I had to look for somebody who, what did they do? Where'd they come from? How long were they there? That would be an investigation that may take me, you know, 3 or 4 hours when we had motion detection because I'd have to estimate, okay, if you're walking in front of this camera over here, he's probably going to walk in front of this one. So I need to pull the footage from that. This does it within a couple minutes. It's pretty wild. Again, that AI and no monthly fees or anything like that is really made the finding footage side of things much, much easier. And so let's talk about the modernization path. What to do first? How do you prioritize all these things that we just talked about? Um, so the results of your health and access checks should determine your initial priorities and focus. So if you got broken cameras, NVRs that are not working, hard drives that are dead, obviously you want to go ahead and replace those as soon as you possibly can. Um, if you've got bad or incorrect views, so a camera that may be shifted down or is dirty or whatever, you want to handle that very quickly as well. And then the other thing that I would throw onto these priorities, if you have port forward to remote access, that's something that you want to handle as quickly as possible as well. And next, what we'll talk about is determining that budget and time allocation. And there are three kind of main paths that we look at when somebody reaches out to us and they have an older system or they have locations with a lot of older systems is we need to sort of figure out, what the budget is and what the time and appetite is to handle this project, right? Sometimes it's very low. Like there's very low lean resources. Everyone's sort of maxed out. So somebody spending, a lot of time on their security camera system may not happen. Then there's places that are willing to spend a little bit of time and money into it, moderate kind of resources. And then you have the ones that have, maybe just want to go ahead and get the best possible. They have a lot of resources and time. Or time or money, one of those two things to handle it as quickly as possible. So let's start with like the lean, low resources kind of one. So this is where, you maybe have either a low amount of time to dedicate to this or potentially budget as well. So a couple things that you can do with this, right? Clean and reorientate your cameras. This is going to have a big impact on that night vision. So if your night vision kind of looks bad and you go like, I thought it looked better 5 years ago when you bought the system, you're probably not wrong. It's probably because dirt and dust and grime and stuff had built up on it. You can sort of give yourself a little bit of a refresher by doing that. And then when it comes to the access side, you know, I would say you either invest in that a little bit of IT kind of setup and knowledge when it comes to that VPN or Tailscale and Cloudflare tunnels, or replace that NVR if you're using port forwarding. And that's where we begin with most people on lean resources, right? So the NVR is the brain, the recorder of the system, but it's also your interaction point with the system. So it's going to determine what kind of app you use. It's going to determine how that app gets remote access, whether it's through port forwarding or P2P. And so we always recommend to prioritize the budget on replacing the recorder first because that's going to give you your best impact. It's going to get you into modern access. It's going to get you into a better app, better remote access, etc. And in most cases, older cameras are still compatible with it, right? It may require a little bit additional setup, etc. But most of the time, you can retain your cameras and replace the head end unit or the NVR in this case and get sort of the best of both worlds there. This is true even if you have old analog cameras. We can actually still work with them and get you a modern access, modern system, even if you have analog systems. So, and then we look at more of a moderate approach. So once we maybe already replaced the NVR, what is maybe the next thing we sort of look at? When we start to look at, instead of looking at the entire system, we're like, let's replace all the cameras because that'd be awesome, right? And we know they're going to get better, and we have to figure out where the key points are and where the biggest threat points are within the system. So, figure out the cameras that are most important to you, what the most important areas in that you want to check. And you want to potentially upgrade and replace those key cameras. So, what that's going to get you when you upgrade those cameras, especially again if you've got a 5+ year old system, is you're going to get much better image quality. Today our most common resolution that we ship out is 4K or 8 megapixels. 5+ years ago, you may be looking at 1 to 2 megapixel cameras. So details are just going to be much better on those cameras. Another side of that too is that day and night vision is at a sort of a revolutionary point right now. We actually did have a webinar on night vision just a little bit ago that talked about some of the new features, including the Chrome IQ, which is a new image processor that allows it to go basically this image over here is these are both at 3 a.m. over here. So basically daytime during night, it's pretty incredible. So all of a sudden, you go from having maybe night vision, not too confident that you're going to be able to get the image at night, to having great detail, color, etc. And then it's access to AI features too. So all of a sudden you upgrade 3 or 4 of those key cameras, or whatever kind of the key areas are for you, and not only to get better image quality day or night, but you're also going to have access to potentially AI features like being able to do color search or that trace search feature we talked about, with the understanding that, hey, we're checking this camera all the time, right? We're spending hours a week looking at this camera. Time is money, and if AI can reduce the amount of time you're spending, it's going to also save you money in the long run. Another chisel approach, as we say, is multi-sensor cameras. This is another avenue that's been growing in the last 2 years. Um, So multi-sensor cameras are basically cameras with multiple cameras within one housing. And so the key point about this is it only requires one Ethernet cable. So if you're looking to maybe expand coverage, you kind of go like, man, I not only is my current cameras maybe I have some issues, but I also have some blind spots that I'd really like to cover, but I don't necessarily want to um, have to go run new cables and all that. That's generally one of the biggest pain points of adding new cameras is you could replace that one camera with that one view with a multi-sensor camera. So that allows you to gain views. Like in this case, this one is one that has two cameras built into it, two domes. You could point one to the left, one to the right, one back forward. Lots of flexibility there. And that's going to reduce your installation time and complexity. You can all of a sudden grow your coverage very dramatically with just a couple multi-sensor cameras. We also, I should mention too, do have a four lens one too that you could put inside a large building and do a lot of coverage with just that one camera. So there's a lot of options with multi-sensor. And then the other side of this too is like high impact. This is where there's a lot of resources committed to modernizing the security camera system. And um, this is for, again, if you have a higher budget or your system is in a especially bad state where you got cameras that are offline, they're going on and off, and things are just kind of to a point where it seems like maybe we need a little bit of a reset, right? And sometimes there's really two paths of this, right? There's rip and replace, which means that you're getting rid of all those cameras, you're replacing them with brand new modern cameras. You're replacing the head end or NVR as part of that too. Um, and when we're doing this, we almost always recommend, again, modern 4K cameras with AI so that you're setting up your system for success for up to a decade, right? Um, when we're doing this and we're doing this fresh look and impact, we want to make sure you're getting everything you need out of it so that there's not 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, regrets or concerns about maybe missed coverage or areas where, man, I would have wish I had the color search feature there or something like that. So, um, another option for a high impact, and a lot of times, in a lot of cases, sometimes the cameras are in an okay situation. Maybe they're not the highest resolution, but they're okay for where they're in. If you have a small room or something like that, um, you don't necessarily need a 4K camera in a small room, right? So what we can also offer an option where you hang on to your cameras, as many of them as potential, and we can replace them with a brand new AI platform that gains AI to all your existing cameras. And so opens up a world of possibilities for you. Now, I will mention that this does come with a pretty high-end initial equipment cost and an ongoing subscription fee. But in some cases, again, that's going to be worth it for you if you're in a situation where um, you want to go from maybe something that seems archaic and hard to access, hard to use, to something very modern, 2026 cloud oriented, AI oriented, in as little friction as possible. This is going to be something where we can reuse your cameras. You're not going to have very little to low people on location to replace cameras, replace wiring, etc. So this can have a really high impact on terms of like the actual what your system can do for you without necessarily the high impact of actually like reinstalling an entire system. So, and this is where I'll mention, you know, every single situation is a little different, right? There are complexities in every location, and there's very rarely any one size fits all. I can't just be like, hey, do this, do this, this. We can give you some suggestions, prioritizations. But what I'd recommend is if you're in this situation and you want to know a little bit more, do a one-to-one consultation with one of our experts. It's no obligation, it's completely free. Tell them where your system is now, what your pain points are, how you feel about it. Talk to us about what kind of time and budget constraints you have, and they'll work with you to maximize that return on investment. Um, we're not just there to sell you whatever, things that we currently have. We're there to make sure that everything fits within your budget and time constraints. And so if that's adding a couple multi-sensor cameras, that might be the best thing. And then you might go, well, can you install it? And we can say, yes, we can as well. So there's a lot of options there that we can provide, or if you just want the equipment, we could do that too. So, um, every situation's different. Certainly reach out to us and we're happy to um, go on to it. But with that, that kind of ends the initial part of the webinar here. If you have any questions, feel free to put them into the Q&A. I'll wait a couple minutes here for that. I will mention too, we will send out an email with some resources and the recording for this. So if you want to check it out, watch it again, or go back and see something, we'll have that. And of course, it'll also be on YouTube after as well. So, want to thank everybody for the time this afternoon and or morning, depending on where you are. Um, and again, if you have any questions, whether you get it now or you think you leave and you're like, oh man, what about this? Feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have. So, and I'll keep it just open here for a minute more and see if we have any questions. And if not, we'll go ahead and close it out, let you guys get back to your rest of your day. For those who do go to the webinar pretty often here, you may have noticed that Dylan's not here. He is on parental leave, so congratulations to him. So I'm running this one solo, but happy for him. So, all right, looks like we don't have any questions. So, I will go ahead and end this one here. We'll see you on the next one. Have a great rest of your week. Bye bye.